The first book of Moses, Bereshith, chapter 1, first creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Sheshach rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'um, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayath, or the Paleo Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo Hebrew scriptures.
Good morning, everybody. It's like 8:12-ish, 8:13 back on the East Coast in the United States of America, the good old US of A. Of course, it's a brisk, gray, rainy afternoon here in England, in merry old England. And I told you, I gave you warning that, like Cato in the with Inspector Clouseau, if you remember the Pink Panther films back in the day, I'm springing out at you. I'm keeping you guys in tip-top shape, keeping you on your toes. You never know when I'm coming at you. I'm live right now on YouTube. Now, see, here's the thing. A lot can go wrong when you're live, and you never really know. I mean, at any given moment, I mean, the house could, catch on fire. My children could come running through this room right now, crying about the whole he said, she said, he hit me, he took my toy, parental stuff. You never really know what's going to happen. Now, last Friday night was nothing short of a disaster. According to my analysis of the situation, I started out, I like going live. I prefer only to go live. I don't like to just record. If I were recording to myself right now, see, I could see people showing up in here. This is great. If I were just recording to myself right now, it just wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have the same kind of chemistry. And I like seeing you guys' comments in here and the interaction. It started out, of course, I've had internet problems. I might have internet problems today. I don't know. My mic cut out on me. It could cut out on me at any given moment. Who really knows? And then, of course, I was getting sick. And then the real kicker was when my computer literally shut down on me, which has never happened before in the history of me going live, and it happened in front of everyone. It was this black screen. I had to go and pull the whole video, and I immediately wanted to do it again the next day, but I was coming down sick. For those of you who attend Kingdom Verse afterwards, what I call the late party now, I was on my phone. I couldn't even get my computer back on at that time. I was able to resolve some tech issues. I lost my voice, got it back. I think I'm good to go. And let's talk about this. Bashara Matthew, this would be Paleo Matthew. And this week we're going to be going back to the very beginning. I know I said I wasn't going to do this. I know I said that I wasn't going to make this a genealogy study. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Matthew chapter 1, or if you go to Luke chapter 3, you have these two genealogies leading through the patriarchs all the way up to Yahshua, Messiah. And of course, Yahshua would be, most of you know him as Jesus. I think most of my audience either calls him Yeshua or Yahusha or what have you. but something. So I initially I kind of skimmed over Genesis chapter 1. Uh, we will be covering Genesis today. I skimmed over Matthew chapter 1, and then I got to thinking about it, and I pulled up Luke and Matthew side by side. Now I've done this my whole life. Like, this was nothing new to me. But this is one of the incredible things about the Bible is you know how you could read something your entire life and you read it 100 times and then something just stands out at you. This happens to me every single week almost. I'm doing these studies for you guys, and it takes me days to do these, come up with these studies, and then I'm live. And as I'm live, I'm like, oh my goodness, I never saw that before. As I'm reading it, that happens to me all the time. So I've always known that these two genealogies were different, that they didn't line up. And I always went with what's called what is referred to as the majority theory. There's nothing wrong with going with the majority theory, but in this case, I now think it's wrong. The majority theory is that one genealogy is the lineage of Joseph, and the other is the lineage of Mary. Of course, Matthew would be the Mary or Miriam genealogy. And so what happens is you watch, you could start with Joseph and Mary, or you could go back to, say, Abraham, and you watch these two separate chronologers kind of go back and forth like this. Like they have different parents, and then they come together with the same parents, and then they separate again, and then they come back, like two lovebirds. They can't stay back from each other throughout history. I no longer believe this is going to be the case. Excuse me, I'm going to have a few coughs today. Stay with me. Here we go. Had to get that out of my throat. All right, so let's start reading again. And we're going to be dealing today with the curse of Jehoiakim. Now, I'm not going to tell you yet. I dropped the ball a little bit too early in the video that I pulled. I'm not going to tell you yet what my theory is on why these two genealogies appear to be a contradiction. They appear not to work. And in fact, this is one of those things, like when people turn away from the faith and they then, maybe they have like daddy issues or whatever, and they start like trying to drill holes into the Bible. Matthew chapter 1 and Luke chapter 3 are two big ones that they will put side by side, and they'll say, see, the Bible is a contradiction that doesn't make sense. But I have found that I've been wrestling with the Bible my entire life, guys, my entire life. And I still am. There are things that I'm wrestling with, not going down the Paul route today, but Paul is one of the biggest things that people wrestle with. And I love it. I have learned to really appreciate the struggle, because when you don't understand something or it doesn't make sense to you, instead of just saying, that's it, I'm just, throw the baby out with the bathwater, I'm done, I'm over this. And people will do it for very little things, especially when you're going through like extra biblical books. And there's this one little passage like, that doesn't line up with my understanding of this passage in canon. We're throwing the whole book out. People do that all the time. And I think what we need to do is wrestle with this stuff. And when you do, when you come out on the other end, you have a much better understanding of it. All right. So you can see over here, now we are a publisher of the Paleo scriptures. We are putting them out. Before we get in, you can see this lined up on the left. Over here, I put the KJV for those of you who may not have, this translation in front of you. This is what we sell in the store right here. Excuse me, my throat is still very. We'll see if I can make it through this today. Man. All right, I'm sorry, guys. I thought I was good to go before I hit the live button. Maybe I'm not going to make it through today. Right here, this is Bishara Matthew. This is in our store. We do have links to this below this video. Come in. This is going to be a long study, as you can tell. I'm going to go through this verse by verse. This is what we put out. Order yourself a copy. You have time to get it before we're well into it. And this is, of course, the fundraiser for the rest of May of 2025. I put these, link it under my YouTube channel every single week. And this, we are a widow's ministry. We're supporting Rebecca. We're supporting Pamela. Last month was the third month that we met our total goals. The third month in, doing this for a couple years now. And we were able to get Pamela her full amount. And of course, Pamela is the one translating the scripture. So a lot of people are confused on the Paleo. They're like, no, we already have biblical Bibles out there where they use Paleo names. No, we're not doing that. We're not just taking the word God and making it all a Hayam. We are literally doing a complete transfer of the Hebrew back into Paleo, and then bring it into English. We're converting it back to the original language of the Bible. And we know this process works. We have videos on this if people have questions. I mean, the cat in the hat doesn't show up in Genesis chapter 3. That's how we know it works. It's a beautiful, beautiful story that the Paleo tells. And, you know, if y'all puts that on your heart, we are looking for ministry supporters, people who want to, this is going to be a 10 to 15 year process. Excuse me, not to mention all the work I do, you know, and all the videos and the research and so on and so forth. So if y'all puts it on your heart, please send some support our way. Let's get right into this. I am sounding better. Thank you, Kyle. Unfortunately, I underestimated because I haven't been talking much, and I thought, you know, boom, I could get through this, but I literally lost my voice, and I kind of came back a little bit too soon. But nevertheless, I'm sorry. All right. Hopefully, I won't have too many of those sorries in here. Reading from the Paleo, going through Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy of Yeshua ben Daud, that would be David, this Yeshua, son of David. These are the generations of Yeshua ben Daud, son of Abraham. Abraham brought forth Yitzchak, and Yitzchak brought forth Yaakub, and Yaakub brought forth Yehudah and his brothers. Yehudah brought forth Pharetz and Zerach, and from Thumar, Pharetz brought forth Hatzara'un, and Hatzara'un brought forth Ram, and Ram brought forth Amayunadab, and Amayunadab brought forth Nukashon, and Nukashaun brought forth Shalamaun, and Shalamaun brought forth Ba'uaz from Rahab the fornicator. Ba'uaz brought forth Abed from Ra'uth, and Abed brought forth Yeshaya, and Yeshaya brought forth Daud. So, of course, Yeshaya, there would be Jesse. And then, of course, you guys know David, Daud. And Daud brought forth Shalama from the covenant woman of Arayah, Shalama, brought forth Rakabaam. Rakabaam brought forth Asa'a, and Asa'a brought forth Yehoshaphat. And Yehoshaphat brought forth Yaurad, and Yaurad brought forth Azariah. Azariah brought forth Hezekiah, or there'd be Hezekiah, and Hezekiah brought forth Manasseh. Manasseh brought forth Amaun, and Amaun brought forth Yeshaya. Yeshaya brought forth Jeconiah and his brothers in the exile of Babel. So Jeconiah right there is, we're going to be talking about, he's going to be the key. I'm letting you know. I'm not telling you, unless if you were one of the lucky, 50 people who were watching my Friday night video that was a bit of a disaster. We had that moment together from here to eternity, but he is the key to figuring this out. The riddle of the two different genealogies. Jeconiah brought forth Sha'alathu-Ya'al, and Sha'alathu-Ya'al brought forth, here would be Zerubbabel, another famous name in there. Zerubabel brought forth Alahakuyam, and Alahakuyam brought forth Azaur, and Azaur brought forth Zadauk, and Zadauk brought forth Akuyam, and Akuyam brought forth Alayahud, and Alayahud brought forth Eleazar, and Eleazar brought forth Athmathun, and Methun brought forth Yaakov, and Yaakov brought forth Yausaph, and this Yausaph is the one who is the man of Miriam, mother of the one we call Mashiach, and who is called in a foreign barbarous language Christos. Yes, it does say that right there in the Paleo, that the Greek, what we call Jesus Christus, would be the barbarous language. And you take that for what it is. don't get mad because that's what the text says. Just reevaluate our own lives and make decisions based on that. I also want you to take a quick note there at Yosef, at Yahusaf, the man of Miriam. And we'll be talking about him a little bit. So, I mean, I take that back. Never mind. Never mind what I said. In all the generations from Abraham until Daoud are 10 and 4 generations. Be 14, 7 plus 7. And from Daoud until the exile in Babel are 10 and 4 generations, another 14. And from the exile in Babel until Yasha'u are 10 and 4 generations. I will point out that Yasha'u, it doesn't say Yeshua there. That is not a typo. I asked Pamela about that. This is one of the great things about her translations is that she just translates what she sees. The problem is what we have shown is that many translators, many translators are just assuming, they kind of under these assumptions, there's these scholarly opinions, and they kind of go with it, even though that's not what the text says. There are times in Matthew in the document where it says Yeshua, there's the A is dropped. She didn't insert the A back in just because let the text speak for itself. All right, so let's talk about the genealogy confusions, the differences in Matthew, Luke, and Moses. Yes, I'm including Moses in this because he does come up a lot, especially when I'm not going to show you Matthew yet. We just read through Matthew, but I'm going to put Luke side by side with Moses. This is one of the things that I have commented on many years ago now. So you can see that this is one of the big differences between Matthew and Luke, by the way, too. You'll see that Matthew starts with Abraham. Luke decides not to start with Abraham. He goes all the way back to Adam. This is why we can line up Luke and Moses side by side. You see, he starts with Adam. It's going good all the way up to Noah, Shem, and Arphaxad. And then, boom, Moses, he skips right over Canaan. It's not there. Luke adds him in. So it's like, well, what's going on here? Well, I don't know if I have the solution to this, but I do have some observations to give. And then it goes all the way up to Abraham. So it's a smooth sailing in both genealogies, but Moses in Genesis skips right over Canaan. He skips over a whole generation. Now, the problem with this, okay, so here, now, so just hold that thought and we'll get back to it. Now we're going to line up Matthew and Luke side by side. You can see over here, as I mentioned, Matthew, he's not interested in the patriarchs from Adam up to Abraham. He starts with Abraham. Luke, and here we have a Canaan. He's included in here, right? Moses didn't include him. So with, I've shown you in the past, that according to Moses, we get 10 and 10 generations. Luke, he's doing 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7 generations, or he'll do 14 generations or whatever, 7 plus 7. But he's counting in sevens all the way up to the number 70. Actually, 77 specifically. All right. So I put these in green because Matthew and Luke, they agree on these. They have all the same names. But then we get to Hezron. And Hezron has Aram being his son, going down to Aminadab. But Luke, he doesn't have Aram as his son. He has Arni and Admin, where we get the word administration from. And goes straight to Abinadab. So it's like, wait a second, did Aminadab, did he have two fathers? Did he have Aram and Admin? Or did they have different names? That could be two. That could be the case. Does happen. But we go over here to Nashon. Then he has two different sons, Salah and Salmon. So it's like Boaz. Did Boaz have two fathers, Salah and Salmon? Well, I'm going to show you that that could be the case, that it's one father with two names. That could be the case. I don't think it is. I think something else is going on. Now, it's smooth sailing again. Boaz, Obed, Jesse, David to Solomon. Matthew takes the route that all of us would expect he would take. You go from David to Solomon. Luke isn't interested in Solomon. He goes down to Nathan. Well, Nathan was Solomon's brother, but he wasn't king. So why is Luke including Nathan? So you can see all these names going all the way down. This is our Kings list in First, Second Chronicles, First and Second Kings, that kind of stuff. And it's all the Sunday school stories we know. But on Luke's side, he goes with these names we don't know. I mean, we don't know a lot of these people. Going with Nathan, what did Nathan do, right? Going all the way down to Melchi. And then you get Neri and Jeconiah here. This is Jeconiah's curse, by the way. All right. So this is the guy. This is the guy, the key to understanding all this that we want to talk about today. But according to this, Shealtiel had two fathers again, Neri and Jeconiah. What's going on? It became so bad that, like my cough, this problem is a lot like my cough tonight, just so you know. It became such a problem amongst chronologists that some of them have suggested that Shealtiel and Zerubbabel are, on both of these genealogies, are two separate people, because they're having a hard time even matching them up. If this is like father to son, this is ridiculous, right? Doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, they break away again. Matthew goes with a Behud over here, whereas Luke goes with Risa. And you can see all the names on here, they don't match up. But eventually, we get to Joseph or Yosef and Yahshua. And it's like, what in the world's going on here? How is it that Yosef and Luke has Heli for a father, and in here he has Jacob or Jacob for a father, Yosef, right? Doesn't make any sense. All right. So in review, here are some of the differences between Luke and Matthew. David to Salathiel has 13 names. And Zerubbabel to Joseph has 9 names in Matthew. As you can see, if you look over here, Luke, there are Adam to Abraham, 21 names in Luke. That's fine because Matthew doesn't include those. But you see, David to Salathiel has 20 names, so he has an additional 7 names. And Zerubbabel to Joseph, he has 19 names. That's an additional 10 names. So that's an additional 17 names in Luke in that genealogy that Matthew doesn't have. Now, I showed last week, actually it'd be 2 weeks ago now, in Moses, that there are 10 generations from Adam to Noah, 10 more generations from Noah to Abraham. And of course, Moses skips Canaan, whereas Luke includes him. So let me just deal with this really quickly. Last Friday night when I was live, one of the first comments that I had from somebody is they said, I hope you can address the timeline differences in the Greek LXX versus the Masoretic. To which I quickly responded, I actually wrote a book on it. It's called The 7,000 Year Timeline Deception, if anybody wants to go check it out. And in the Greek LXX, there is 1,500 years, additional years by the time you get to Messiah, all the way up from Adam to Messiah. The Hebrew Masoretic, for anyone out there, if you do not know what the Hebrew Masoretic is, just go to your bookshelf and open up a Bible, NIV, NASB, King James, whatever. It is any of the Old Testament from Genesis all the way up to the New Testament, Malachi or Micah, all those, the minor prophets. It goes off of a document that we call the Hebrew Masoretic, which is actually only, it's a little over 1,000 years old, according to the scholars. And the Greek LXX, which is at least 1,000, maybe 1,500 years older than the Hebrew Masoretic. Those are the older documents that we have. And the timeline doesn't match up. So this is why a lot of the end times kind of futurist eschatological people say we're like living in the year 6,000 and it's all about to come to an end. That's a modern timeline. If you're going according to the oldest timeline that we have in the Greek LXX, we're actually like in the year 7,500 or something right now. We're way past that at this point. So this is basically right here. You could see right here in Genesis 10:24 is when it happens, and 11:12. You can see in Genesis 10:24 in the Masoretic it says Arpachshad became the father of Shelah, whereas in the Greek LXX it says that he became the father of Canaan. Right? You could see that right there. So we don't really know what happened. Why is the Hebrew skipping this? Why was it removed? Was it added to the Greek or was it removed from the Hebrew? That's the question we all have. And was it also used in order to kind of make the timeline work post Abraham to the modern, Jews who made the Hebrew Masoretic? I'll let you guys discuss that and decide. That's not really what we're talking about tonight. Luke, amazingly, though, his timeline, he shows that there were 21, 14, 21, 21 generations. From Adam to Abraham was 21 generations. From Isaac to David was 14. Nathan to Salathiel was 21. And Zerubbabel to Yeshua was 21 generations. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. Pretty amazing stuff. So the question of the day, or of the decade, I guess, something that's been picking up talking points, particularly now that Enoch is really making a comeback, was Luke personally sourcing the book of Enoch? Because Enoch has what's called the 70 generations prophecy. Now, I will quickly point out that according to Moses, right, there are 10 generations going up to Noah, of which Enoch is the 7th. All right. So the 70 generations start from Enoch. So you scratch off the first 7 and number 8 would start, and it goes all the way up. So 70 generations. So technically by the time we're going to get to Messiah, I've just given away, is actually 77 generations from Adam, but we're looking at 70 generations. And this is what it says. And Yahweh has said unto Mikael, go bind Shemiyaza. Shemiyaza was the leader of the 200 watchers, and his associates who have united themselves with women so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. In those days they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. And whosoever shall be condemned and destroyed will from thenceforth be bound together with them to the end of all generations. Now, quick point here, because I'm not going over Enoch's 10-week calendar tonight. It is interesting, though, that at the end of the 10th week, it says that the watchers are, they're not judged until the very end. Okay, so when you get to the book of Revelation, and it talks about in Revelation 20 into 22, and it talks about the end of the 1,000 years, what we call the millennial kingdom. There's a little season of deception. How long that season is can be up for debate, right? Some people say 10 days. Other people say, 500 years or 1,000 years or whatever. But it's at the end of that Satan is then thrown into the lake of fire. And if you can understand that he's a Zazzle, he is one of these being judged right here. So, how does this work? How does this work? The way I see this, and let me just show this to you right here. From Enoch to Yahshua is 70 generations. All right. So what Luke is saying, that according to the book of Enoch, this prophecy it reached its fulfillment with Yahshua, that the watchers, this would include Azazel too, were judged. How does that work? This is where I'll give the brownie points, I guess, to the preterist kind of thinking crowd who are saying that the millennial kingdom was literally kickstarted off in 70 AD. I am of the opinion that it was later down the turnpike, 500 AD. It's all a part of my 7,000 year timeline deception, guys. Book where I'm just sourcing scripture and come up with that timeline. Nevertheless, the way I see this was that at the time with Enoch, it's kind of like they were incarcerated, the watchers, without bail. It's like, that's it. They're not judged yet, but just put them down into the earth. They have done so much destruction. We are putting them down into the earth. And it's almost like at this 70 generation mark, okay, then they're going to get their judgment. It's going to be finalized. And this is why I think that when I think the watchers were released too with Satan. We always talk about Satan release. I think the watchers were too. they're coming with wrath. They're coming with full deception. Like they know, like there's no revoking this sentence. It's been done, and they're coming to wreak havoc. This is when I think it happened. This is what I think happened in 1 Peter 3:18, famous passage. You guys even know what I'm going to read before I read it to you. Excuse me. This is what Peter says. For Christ or Hamashiach also suffered for sins once for all time, the just for the unjust, so that he might bring us to Allahayam, having been put to death in the flesh, he made alive in the spirit. And this is what I want you to see here, in which he also went and made proclamation to the spirits in prison, who once were disobedient, with the patience of Allahayam kept waiting in the days of Noah, during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. So it appears that at the time of his crucifixion, in between his crucifixion and his resurrection, he goes down to Sheol, and he goes and he made proclamation to the spirits of prison. Some translations will say he ministered to, but it seems like he goes down there and he's now declaring their judgment. Like, look, I'm in control now. I live the life that you were supposed to live. To the watchers, you guys as Allahayam, as gods, you were supposed to live this kind of life. You were supposed to honor our Father in heaven. You did not. You rebelled. And now I'm here. I can put, the judgment on you. We see the same thing happening, or a very similar thing happening in the Gospel of Peter. I'm not going to read this whole passage here because again, a little bit of distraction for what we want to talk about, but the scene is leading up to the resurrection. It is Sabbath. Sunday has not come yet. And this actually says it's nighttime. Now, people will argue whether it happened before sunset on Sabbath or when it happened. According to this, it's nighttime. It's not Sunday yet, just so we're clear. And again, I know half of my audience is going to argue when the day begins, at sunset or sunrise, whatever. I'm of the opinion that the sunrise starts the new day, not sunset. All right. So this would still be Sabbath, the day of rest. And the guards are posted there. The Jews in this case are also posted there. They want to make sure that there's no funny business. And they see these 2 angels go into the crypt. They're all freaked out by this. They can see the light moving around in there. The 2 angels come out and they're holding Messiah. They're actually supporting him up, which, it's a different kind of picture of the resurrection. Like they're actually, I don't know if it's because he's still weak. I don't really believe he is. I almost see it more like they're supporting him, like, this guy's the king, right? Kind of like, you carry Cleopatra, right? They're carrying the king. Anyways, a voice comes down from heaven and says this, and they were hearing a voice from the heaven saying, have you made proclamation to the fallen asleep? In which the cross, or the Tav, replies, yes. I actually think that this was the rod of Yahweh that he's carrying. This may be the same rod that Joseph of Arimathea had, maybe the same rod that Moses had. That being said, it responded, yes. All right. So let's get back into the what I think is happening with this timeline between Matthew and Luke. All right. Tell you guys, I don't think Matthew is a direct father to son lineage, blood DNA genealogy. Luke is. Luke goes a genealogical route, going from Adam, showing how Adam connects to Messiah. And he goes through a lot of the kings. He decides not to go through Solomon. He goes through Nathan and through all these other people. Whereas Matthew is a king's list. So let me explain to you guys how this would work. So now keep in mind with the genealogy, to begin with, I was just doing my genealogy again recently. And it's interesting because I started doing my genealogy like 15 years ago. I got a lot less information then. I started making strides where I actually broke it into the late Middle Ages now. But like my 12th great-grandfather is Captain Christopher Newport, direct great 12th great-grandfather. Newport was one who was commissioned by King James of the King James Bible, King James I, to found Jamestown, according to the official narrative. And he has John Smith on his boat, the whole Pocahontas story, Captain Newport. Right now, at any time, going back to my 12th great-grandfather, Any one of them could have been adopted, right? So I might not be related to Newport. All it takes is one adoption and it all changes, right? But what happens is if you adopt a son, they take on your name. They are now your son. You are handing off this daughter or son in marriage, as if they were your own. You see how that works? It messes up the genealogies, but that Yah is not as interested in that. I think. I mean, history will show that he is more interested in adoption. The fact that we're all grafted into Israel. It doesn't really matter if we're related to Abraham or not. I think that, I'm always amazed at how many people are like, I don't have to be obedient to the Bible. I'm not a Jew, right? Of course, Abraham, just so you guys know, was not a Jew. He was a Hebrew, right? Some of them get it right. They go like, I'm not related to Abraham. I'm like, how can you possibly know that? Like that is impossible to play, Russian roulette with your soul. Just put a gun up there and bake everything, put all stakes on the fact that you are not related to Israel, anyone in Israel and anyone in Israeli history and all of the Bible. You're not related to any of them, and therefore you don't have to be obedient. That doesn't matter, by the way, because we are grafted into Israel, right? So it is our story. They are our parents, whether we are related to them or not. The funny thing is, the irony is that every one of you listening, there's a higher likelihood that you are related to them than not. And this is going by official history, by the way. This isn't even going in Millennial Kingdom research, in which, we're all like related to Israel, absolutely 100%, from the resurrected saints. All right. So going back into Matthew and Luke here, we got King Jeconiah. He's, of course, the curse of Jeconiah. And then you got over here Luke. He skips them all together. And he talks about Neri. And then we got Shealtiel and Zerubbabel. And so what's the problem? Does Shealtiel have two fathers? He actually does. And I just told you what it is, adoption, and I'll be sure to dig into that with scripture. So let's talk about the curse of Jeconiah first and show why including him in the genealogy is a big problem. Actually, it's not, but it is and it isn't. And this is what Jeremiah prophesies. He goes by, it can be confusing because he can be Jeconiah or Jehoiakim, either name. And of course, these are the English translations. As you guys know, there's no J's in the modern Hebrew or the Paleo. This is like even post-Latin, because Latin didn't even have the J's, right? All right. Thus saith Yahweh, go down to the house of the king of Yehuda. This would be Jeconiah, and speak this word, and say, hear the word of Yahweh, O king of Yehuda, that sittest upon the throne of David, thou and thy servants, and thy people that enter in by these gates. Thus saith Yahweh. Now, what's going to follow here is like Psalm 82. And what's funny is that, like, he doesn't say here, go down each of the 613 commands of the Torah and keep them. Not that he wasn't supposed to, but what he's every single time that Yahweh has a problem, he always delves into the spirit of the letter versus the opposite. There's the letter of the law, there's the spirit of the law, right? So I have Christians come up to me all the time and they're like, I don't have to keep the letter of the law because I keep the spirit of the law. And I'm just like, wow, that's amazing, because the spirit of the law is hardcore righteousness that's way harder to keep than the letter of the law. And I've given you guys these examples like 100 times now, but assuming there's new people listening to this, let me give you an example that I really like, that I think everybody seems to agree with. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. So I myself, I've never murdered anybody. And, I say that, for my FBI agent listening, but also for everyone else out there. I have never murdered. I've never even thought of murdering anybody. In like the way of like, oh, I want to end that man's life. I've never gotten to that point. I've never picked up a gun to shoot someone. I've never picked up a knife to stab someone. I've never made, try to poison someone's food. However, now that would, so I have kept the letter of the law. Give myself a round of applause, right? And everyone else out there, if you have never murdered anybody, good, awesome, all right? You've kept the letter of the law. However, Messiah ups the stakes. And he's like, okay, that's great and all, but there's a spirit of the law. And it's like, if you have anger towards your brother, and you call him you fool, whatever, you now have murder in your heart. That is the seed that is going to, if it grows to fruition, to rotten fruit, that it's going to lead to physical murder. And that is the spiritual murder in your heart. So yes, I am guilty of that. I have committed that level of murder the Messiah talks about, that I have to cleanse out of my heart, right? So for those of you out there who's saying that, you keep the spirit of the law, that's amazing. Like, you don't murder, you don't commit adultery, you don't even lie to yourself. Like, that's incredible, guys. You're keeping like Torah, like hardcore righteousness style, right? And my point that I always bring up is that if you're actually keeping the spirit of the law, you're actually keeping the letter of the law. I don't believe that you are going to break the letter of the law if you're keeping the spirit of the law. Does that make sense? So let's just get our facts straight as we talk about the Torah and how the Torah was done away with. If the Torah was done away with, then the spirit was done away with too. The spirit of the Torah. Okay. So obviously no Christian is going to say that. And this is what he says, Psalm 82, when he gets in front of the Allah Hayam, the gods, and he's like, you need to execute justice and mercy on people, and you will be judged because of that. And he says, execute ye judgment and righteousness, and deliver the spoiled out of the hand of the oppressor, and do no wrong, do no violence to the stranger, the fatherless, nor the widow. There it is again. Neither shed innocent blood in this place. Every single time, guys, that Yahuwah, I've said this before, that the Torah is the mirror reflection of the face of our Father. To stare into the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, is to gaze into the face of our Father. And this is his character. Every time he describes himself, he's like, I want you to emulate me. I want you to be a little creator just like me. And I'm giving you this authority on this. I have authority over you and all the earth, but I'm giving you this authority. So emulate me. Take care of the strangers, the fatherless, the widows. Those are the big 3 ones all the time. Because if you, of course, if we don't honor our father and mother on this earth, we're not understanding, honoring our father and mother in heaven. If we don't take care of the orphans, that would be the fatherless, the widows, those would be those without the husband, and so on and so forth, and the strangers, that we don't understand how the very story of how we're being grafted in. If we truly understand how wonderful our father and mother is in heaven, if we truly understand that we are being grafted in, that we are orphans on this earth, and we are being grafted in to our Father in heaven, then we are going to extend that same belief, that same mercy and grace that we feel ourselves to other people. And we will then, in that way, begin to have this circumcised heart that only Yah can circumcise us. Capiche? Guys, got it? All right. This is the judgment that's put forth on Jeconiah, because he himself is not exemplifying any of these character traits. If you do these things indeed, then shall there enter in by the gates of this house kings sitting upon the throne of David, riding in chariots, and on horses, he and his servants and his people. So he's saying, look, he's giving him time to repent. And he's like, your descendants can continue on this throne. All right. We can keep this going for a long time if you would like. But if you do not hear these words, I swear by myself, saith Yahweh, that this house shall become a desolation. Now he goes through this desolation, and we're just going to skip some of this here. You can see it's a big passage. You can read this for yourself. It's in Jeremiah chapter 22. But here's the 2 things I want you to see here. As I live, saith Yahweh, though Coniah the son of Jehoiakim, king of Yehuda, were the signet upon my right hand, yet would I pluck thee hence. So of course you guys all know about a king would have a signet ring, right? And that's how you seal letters of authority, right? You put a little waxy seal on there, you stamp it in. There's only one of a kind. This is the king's, and when the king does this, and he's like, I am going, your own child, if he were a signet ring on my hand, I will throw it off. I don't want anything to do with your children or your lineage going forward. So it's like, even if there are now kings on the throne of David, they're not going to be related to you. I'm ending your line. This is how he ends it in Jeremiah 22. Thus saith Yahweh, write ye this man childless. This is the king, Jeconiah, childless. Now he had children, but in Yah's eyes, he's done. A man that shall not prosper in his days, for no man of his seed shall prosper. So again, right there, he's not saying that he won't have children, just none of his seed shall prosper. Sitting upon the throne of David and ruling anymore in Yehuda. I don't know about you guys, but we talked about the different lineages we come from. I kind of don't want to come from that lineage. I don't want to come from that guy. Maybe it's been cut off by this point in history. I hope, because nothing great comes from this guy. So the question here is, how could Jeconiah be the father of Shealtiel in Matthew if his genealogical line was finished? When you look at a lot of rabbinical culture, literature and commentary, they say that he repented and therefore this sentence was revoked. To be clear, I do believe that he did repent to some degree. I don't know how much, but I think he had a lot of time to spend in prison. We haven't got there yet, to repent. And I think he came out the other end and he started keeping the Torah. We have evidence of this. Nevertheless, I don't think the sentence was revoked. I don't think this right here comes across to me like, this is said and done. This is the sentence I'm passing on you now. All right. So this right here is the Jehoiakim's rations tablet. This is an actual tablet which can be found in Germany, in a museum in Germany. I don't know if I'm going to get out there on my travels to this museum. I'd like to go see it. And it dates from the 6th century BC and describes the oil. This was found in Babylon. This is one of the great finds out there. They found, just mounds of these tablets out there. And they started, they picked them up and started reading them and translating. They're like, oh, there's the guy from the Bible right there, right? We're not supposed to find the people from the Bible because we're supposed to disprove the Bible in the archaeological world. Nevertheless, this guy actually supports the entire story we see in right here in 2 Kings. I'll read that to you guys in a second. So this dates from the 6th century BC and describes the oil rations set aside for a royal captive identified with Jeconiah, it gets confusing because remember his name is Jehoiakim as well, but Jeconiah, king of Yehuda, tablets from the royal archives of Nebuchadnezzar II, emperor of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, were unearthed in the ruins of Babylon that contained food rations paid to captives and craftsmen who lived in and around the city. And so one of the tablets, it says Ya'u Kinu. That's how remember there's a Y there, no J. Ya'u Kinu, king of the land of Yahudu, is mentioned along with his 5 sons listed as royal princes. And we know his sons lived with him. So this is all a part of Yah's mercy. But let's see what the story says in Kings. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 3 months in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Yerushalayim, and he did evil on the side of Yahuwah in accordance with all that his father had done. And we saw, earlier in Jeremiah that where his heart had strayed, the things that were evil to him, that, he didn't mind shedding blood. He cared nothing about his fellow men. Because he himself didn't see him as one of them. At the time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, went up to Jerusalem, and the city came under siege. And Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came to the city while his servants were besieging it. Then Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he, his mother, his servants, his commanders, and his officials. And the king of Babylon took him prisoner in the 8th year of his reign. He also brought out from there all the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king's house, and he smashed all the articles of the gold that Solomon, king of Yasharel, had made in the temple of Yahweh, just as Yahweh had said. Then he led into exile all the people of Jerusalem, and all the commanders, and all the valiant warriors, 10,000 exiles, and all the craftsmen and the smiths. None were left except the poorest people of the land. So he led the king, Jehoiakim, into exile to Babylon. Also the king's mother, the king's wives, and his officials, and the leading men of the land, he led into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. And all the valiant men, 7,000, and the craftsmen and the smiths, 1,000, all strong and fit for war, these two the king of Babylon brought into exile to Babylon. Now, to remind you, this king is not killed. Okay, so even though he may have been cast off the throne, he was still the king, even though what Nebuchadnezzar is about to do, he's about to put up a puppet king. All right. But to Israel, to Judah, they're like, Judah is looking at this guy going, he may be in prison, but he's still our king. All right. So Zedekiah is made king. Now keep in mind, Zedekiah is not in Luke's list. No, of course, Jehoiakim isn't either, nor is he in Matthew. All right. So Matthew, as I already told you, Matthew's list is a list of kings, a rightful successors going all the way down. So Zedekiah was not included. Matthew was looking at this story going, yeah, he wasn't a true king of Israel, or of Judah, I should say. Then the king of Babylon made his uncle Mattaniah king in his place and changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah or Yirmiah of Libnah. He did evil in the sight of Yahweh in accordance with everything that Jehoiakim had done, for it was due to the anger of Yahweh that this happened in Jerusalem and Yehudah, and he cast them out of his presence, and Zedekiah revolted against the king of Babylon. This guy has to be like, you hear of, puppet rulers, and puppet rulers typically do with when the strings are attached, what they're controlled to do. Once in a while, they do break off and they're assassinated or whatever, which apparently this guy did. He got hot-headed, and he's like, Nebuchadnezzar, who? He's way out there. I'm king of this hill. And Nebuchadnezzar is like, okay. So this is what happens. Now in the 9th year of his reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem again. This is after emptying all the king's gold and treasures and destroying the treasures in the temple. He camped against it and built a siege wall all around it. So the city was under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city that there was no food for the people of the land. It didn't even seem like it was that bad for Jehoiakim beforehand. Then the city was broken into, and all the men of war fled by night by way of the gate between the two walls that were beside the king's garden, though the Chaldeans were all around the city. And they went by way of the Arabah. And anyways, they break in, and this is what it says. And they slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, then put out Zedekiah's eyes and bound him with bronze shackles and brought him to Babylon. So his reign is over. However, we see this right here. Now it came about in the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiakim, king of Yehudah, in the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month, that evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he became king, released Jehoiakim, king of Yehudah, from prison, and he spoke kindly to him and set his throne above the throne of the kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiakim changed his prison clothes and had his meals in the king's presence regularly all the days of his life. And his allowance, a regular allowance, was given to him by the king, a portion for each day, all the days of his life. So, so he's in prison a long time, a lot of time to think, a lot of time to repent. And I do think he repented. And then what's amazing is that this very text here, 2 Kings, talks about this allowance he was given, and then they find the actual tablet, the rock, in Babylon, in the ruins of Babylon, that talks about the same thing. Now, I want to contrast here the signet ring we saw, and Yahweh has like, look, if you or your son are a signet ring on my finger, I'm going to throw it off. Like, you are no signet ring to me. And this is what we read with Zerubbabel. Now, Zerubbabel is an interesting character. Excuse me. He's an interesting character because Zerubbabel's coming into this at a time when they're coming out of captivity, and everybody knows this guy is the king. Keep in mind, he's on both lists, and he kind of, I mean, for whatever reason, they decided, they could have rebelled and been like, that's it, we're putting the kings back in place. He never did. But according to Yahweh, he was a king in his eyes. Then the word of Yahweh came a second time to Haggai on the 24th day of the month, saying, speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Yehuda. So he's not king, but he's governor, right? He's the top dog, saying, I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth, and I will overthrow the thrones of kingdoms and destroy the power of the kingdoms of the nations. And I will overthrow the chariots and the riders, and the horses and the riders will go down, every one by the sword of another. On that day, declares Yahweh of armies, I will take you, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel. So we know this is the same guy. My servant, declares Yahweh, and I will make you like a signet ring, for I have chosen you, declares Yahweh of armies. So Zerubbabel has been chosen to be the king's list, going down from king to king to king to king, all the way to Yahshua. Haggai chapter 2. But wait a second. Are you telling me that Zerubbabel had two fathers? Here's the problem again. We see the Pedai and Shealtiel problem, because according to First Chronicles, this is what we see. We see King Jeconiah. We got that, but then it goes to some guy named Pedaiah to Zerubbabel. Luke, of course, he doesn't even have Jeconiah. He has Neri to Shealtiel to Zerubbabel. And and then of course, Matthew, we got Jeconiah, Shealtiel, Zerubbabel. Hopefully you're all looking at that and going, what? How in the world is this going to be reconciled? All right. So here's First Chronicles chapter 3. This is where I'm getting this sourcing this information on Jeconiah's other son, that is apparently the father of Zerubbabel. And the sons of Jeconiah, the captive, so we know it's the same guy. It's Shealtiel. I should have put that in green because we see that over on Matthew's. He had Shealtiel, his son, but then he had this guy, Pedaiah. I can't even pronounce his name, but we have him. But then we see the sons of Pedaiah were Zerubbabel. Genealogy is not lining up. That's First Chronicles chapter 3. Well, this is my part where I hope to resolve the genealogical problem. For my audience, I've read this so many times from Dabar Deuteronomy 25. You guys already know where I'm going with this. But, for anyone maybe new out there, this is very good to learn about. And this is where we figure out the how to, it's actually the one command for when people talk about polygyny, multiple marriages. This is the one command of the 613 in Torah where it is a must that you have, in order to not sin, in order to keep the commands, you have to take a second wife. All right. This is actually a command. And this is what it says. If brothers settle down to dwell together, and one of them dies, and there exists lacking unto him a son, then the covenant woman of the dead shall not go outside into a stranger. Her brother-in-law shall go in unto her, and he shall take her unto himself for a woman. And the son which she brings forth shall exist as firstborn, and he shall rise up over the name of the dead, so that his name shall not be wiped away from Yasharel. So what in the world did I just read? Let me give you an example. I am actually glad. A lot of the women out there, they read this, go, yeah, sure. I'm sure the man is really enjoying this. Actually, that is, if that is what any women are thinking out there, because I see those comments out there, it's the complete opposite. This right here, I don't want to say it's a nightmare situation, because to keep the Torah is to keep righteousness. All right. Nevertheless, particularly today's world, like I mean, all the men out there, you can think about, like, you have a brother, think about your sister-in-law. At the end of the day, like, most of us are probably very unattracted to our in-laws. Like relationship with the in-laws are not usually good. All right. Having to marry my in-laws is like yuck, like gag me, right? So here's the situation. I do have an older brother. My father still lives. All right. So the inheritance has not been passed out yet. I'm not going to get any inheritance, which is fine. I'm the younger son, but I don't think I'm going to get any. But let's just assume that my older brother, who's 2 years older than me, he dies. Now he has a widow left. This doesn't affect me because luckily, my older brother already has a couple of sons. All right, he's already has his line, but let's say that he has no sons whatsoever. So now he's got a widow, and his widow's like, the man I was married to, his line has been extinguished from his father, and there's not getting any heritage down here. So she comes to me now, and she's like, "Give me sons. I want a son from you." And I'm like, "Seriously? Like, gross." She's probably thinking the same thing. Like, "Look, I can't tolerate you either, but you're next in line. You're giving me a son, and then when I have a son, um, you're going to raise him not in your name, but in your brother's name, which means that he is now eating away at what would be your inheritance, right? You are now securing an inheritance for this line." And the guy is thinking, like, okay, because we all know how babies are conceived. It's like, how long is this going to take? How many times a woman do we, these kind of questions, right? And here's why we know that when Yah wrote this command, that a lot of men were not going to want to do it. It's not just a sex issue either, right? This is like long after that, because once you actually do the deed and conceive, that's probably it. There's probably going to be no more of that going on. I mean, there might be, probably not. And now you're going to be raising this son for your brother. So, but conditionally, should the man take no pleasure in taking for himself his brother's wife, because why would he? Then shall the brother's wife ascend toward the bearded ones, those will be the elders, and she shall declare, "My brother-in-law refuses to raise up for his brother a name in Yasharel. He will not consent to perform the Yabam." Now, Pamela put in the Paleo word there. You can see there, it's the duty of the brother-in-law. So he will not consent to perform the duty. I'm going to start calling it that from now on with my wife, the duty. "And the bearded ones of the city shall call out to him, and shall set a word in order toward him, and he shall stand and shall declare, I have no delight in taking her." So now he's got to go in front of the council. And he's like, "Yeah, I am so disgusted by I'm sorry. I don't want anything to do with this woman. I don't want to do it. Like, I'm not doing the deed. All right. It's not happening. And this is what's going to happen. And his brother's wife has drawn near toward him before the eyes of the bearded one, and she has drawn off his sandal." So she's removing her shoe "from over his foot, and she has spat in his face, and she has pronounced in a loud voice, and she has declared, so and so shall be fashioned to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called out in Yasharel, the house of the drawn out shoe." Okay. So in this situation, you would have, think about this in genealogies. All right. So my name is Noel Joshua Hadley, as you guys know. My older brother's name, I've never said this before on there. My older brother's name is Nathaniel. All right. So, so in the genealogies, thousands of years from now, you might see, if you might see a scenario where he is this, like, let's say the son, just make up a name, a Joshi, yeah, just Josh. Okay. Josh. That's my middle name, Joshua, but he has a son named Josh. And now there is Josh, the son of Noel, but it's actually the son of Nathaniel. Right. And you're like, how in the world does he have two fathers? Okay. So that's how it works. So let's go through this scenario right here. Jeconiah, he's released from prison after being in there for decades. He's had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to repent. And this right here is why I believe he did repent and he was keeping the Torah. He needs heirs. He's the king. He's the true king. The other guy was disposed of, eyes out, all his sons cut off. Jeconiah still has his sons, and he needs heirs, so he marries women, plural. With one wife, Jeconiah has Pediiah, whatever. All right, however you pronounce that name. This is what we saw in 1 Chronicles 3. But you remember the curse. Any actual seed from this guy, Yah is not going to accept him as king. All right. So this guy, Pediiah, he doesn't actually become, the true king heir list. According to Jeremiah 22, as I said, Jeconiah's line was done, meaning his sons could not be king. They're the signet rings that Yah was going to throw off. Well, Jeconiah then marries a widow of a guy named Neri. There's the two fathers, right? He becomes the kinsman redeemer in this case, and he raises Shealtiel as his own. So Shealtiel would not be the actual genetic blood of Jeconiah. However, he is accredited in the king's list. He would be the next king of Yehuda. And this is according to Luke. This could only happen, as I mentioned, if Jeconiah repented and began following the Torah. And it seems probable that Pediiah died with no heir, and Zerubbabel, his next of kin, would marry his widow and take the kingship. All right. I think we're going to be, I'm going to be cutting this in half. And so I'm going to be doing a second video. We're going to be talking about the wise men. I'm going to carry this a little bit further. And I want to ask the question, I scratch my head at this because, as you guys know, I am passionate about researching Mary Magdalene. I have written a book on Mary Magdalene. I am currently fleshing out a second edition, which has ballooned into actually not just a expansive second edition, but actually a second volume as well. So I have a lot of information on this. And the one thing I have never gotten to the bottom of is, who is Joseph of Arimathea in relationship to Yahshua? Now, the common kind of wisdom that, out there is that he's the great uncle. Everyone just assumes he's a great uncle, that he would be Miriam's father's brother. And that when Joseph died, that Joseph of Arimathea comes in and takes care of his nephew. That might very well be the case. In fact, when, the Mary Magdalene researchers out there, they're all under those assumptions. And it's one of those things where we don't really have proof on him being an uncle. I can't find any passage that says that. It's just kind of one of those things where the person with the loud megaphone, the loudspeaker, they just say it loud enough and frequently enough that we all just assume it must be true. They must know what they're talking about. But I am of the opinion, and this opinion can change because it's not a sure thing, that Joseph of Arimathea, Yosef, is actually Miriam's father. All right. So we read this through the genealogy, and I told you to make a note of this. The English says this: and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, the one being called the Christ. Now, this has also been criticized because they're like, how, if Joseph is not actually genetically related, how are they including him in a list? Now, that problem is resolved when we understand the king's list, right? So in that context, Joseph, the traditional Joseph, the father of Yahshua, would actually be, if they were to incite the kingship again and establish the throne of David, it means that Joseph would have been the guy. He would have been the king of all Judah. Fascinating thought that Yahweh chose him to be the father of Yahshua. However, let's look from a different perspective. If it is Joseph of Arimathea, who was the head of the highest on the Sanhedrin, who was close friends with Pontius Pilate, who was wealthy, and he had trade routes all the way to Britain, and some say all the way to the Americas. Okay, Joseph of Arimathea was stinking filthy rich. he actually had the I've done studies on this. He had the rod in his possession that that may actually be Moses's rod. All right. And I just the other day, I'm here in England. I just went to the tree that is said to have been sprouted from that rod. You know how remember Aaron's rod would blossom, and it's called the holy hawthorn. It only blossoms at the winter solstice and around Passover time, twice a year. And incredible guy. All right. So here's what the actual Hebrew says. Now you're looking at modern Hebrew here, and it says he Yahusaph, man Miriam we call Mashiach. That's actually what it says. So you have to understand that all the translators are going, okay, this is what I think it's saying. I'm going to put together a cohesive sentence in English, because that's not a cohesive sentence. That's not how we write English sentences. And I'm going to, add a few words in there, right? You know how people are always accusing you adding to the scripture. Well, actually, you probably can't have a Targum, any kind of Targum, without doing that. Any English translation is just a Targum, guys. So yes, you're going to add, the and a and some periods and, commas, things like that, right? Okay. So I asked Pamela about this. And this is what she responded, because I said, is it possible that when it says Yahusaph being the man of Miriam, that it's actually not referring to a husband, but to a father? All right. Is that possible? And this is what she said. She said, there is an ambiguity to the identity of both Miriam and Joseph here. All right. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there's a lot of translators out there who think like this is not speaking about Joseph, the husband of Mary. Usually when you see man of insert female name, it generally refers to the person's husband. So what they're doing here is they're assuming. However, this is the interesting part. The word husband does not appear in that passage. By that time, we're talking the first century, the word Baal was often used for husband. It doesn't use that here. So it could be assuming that it could be speaking of a different Yosef. All right. So there's that there. And I think that's as far as I want to go tonight on this video, because I'm going to be continuing. We're going to be going into the conception of Yahshua. So in the next video update that I do in my Matthew study, we're going to be talking about the wise men and showing some different historical references to them, different takes on them, as well as docetism and how that plays into this. So yeah, let's do this again. And somebody, I think, was praying for me while I was live, because it started becoming unbearable like 10 minutes into this. And I was sorrowful that I decided to do this video. I'm like, oops, I did a big mistake. I was coughing like crazy, as you guys remember, for those of you who made it through this far. And man, it cleared up. So somebody out there was praying for me. Thank you guys. I love you guys. We'll do this again. Thursday night, I'm coming back on with Jenna. We're going to be going through I'm going to start going through my research in Europe that I'm pulling up here. Guys, I am learning at such an accelerated rate. Like earlier today, I was running around to these different cathedrals and looking up at the ceilings and documenting everything I could, finding some really crazy stuff I'm looking forward to talk about with you guys. So we'll do this again. And if I can actually find the button to end this, good morning, everybody. I think it's 9:30 in the morning in America. So good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in this world.
If you had the power to go back in time and choose to give into a ministry that would effectively change the way the world sees an idea, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Well, you don't have to go back in time. What you can do is right now, you can click the link below and give to the Paleo Hebrew translation effort. What is this? Well, Paleo Hebrew is the ancient form of Hebrew. When you write Hebrew out, you build it. If I said H2O, you know that I mean water. That's what building a language is. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, they all have this idea, even Paleo Babylonian, the Paleo Egyptian, the hieroglyphics, petroglyphs. They have this idea that when you put a certain group of pictures together, it means a word. That's what Paleo Hebrew was. That's what Paleo Hebrew is. Pamela Glasgow is changing the way that we view the scriptures. You can help. you can go ahead and click the link below and find out how you can change your life, your study of the Bible, your children's life, your children's children, and everybody who, the whole world, man, the whole world can benefit greatly from this. And you can have the power to help right now. All you got to do is click it and give. And it's good to give. What does the Bible say? James says, what is good religion? That I defile not myself with the world, then I give to the widows and the orphans. Well, we're working on number one. Sorry, number two. Well, both, actually. We're working on not defiling ourselves, so hopefully you're working on that too. I'm working on that. But we can give to the widows. And the widows, she's right there. And she's doing a work for you, for us, for the whole world. And we have the power to effectively change the paradigm of how we've seen the scriptures from time immemorial to tomorrow. So do that. All right, be blessed and not stressed.